This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
On the inside, Wild again is game, and he's holding on to the lead by a head. Slew of Gold is right at his neck. Here comes Gate Dancer on the outside there in the final furlong. Wild again, desperately holding on to the lead. Slew of Gold is right there in between horses. Gate Dancer on the outside. What a finish. Wild again. Gate Dancer, Slew of Gold in between them. Those three in a dramatic finish, and here's the wire. Wild again does it.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. I'm Mark Cassano. On this morning's Breeders' Cup preview show, a 5-guest lineup, beginning in just a moment with Mr. Charlie Lopresti. And we will, of course, talk about Wise Dan. He will be followed by Mr. Buff Bradley, the trainer of Groupie Doll, Mr. Dick Mandela, who's got Beholder for the Distaff and Indy Point for the Turf. He will be followed by Mr. Simon Callahan, who's got a fascinating runner for the mile in no jet lag. And finally, back to Kentucky for Mr. Ian Wilkes, and we will discuss the defending Classic champion, Fort Larned. Along the way, we'll show you more Breeders' Cup Championship moments to the internal breaks, and time permitting, we will take a look at the Breeders' Cup race schedule for both next Friday and Saturday. So all of that and more if you stay with us for this, our October 26th edition of the program, which is being sponsored by Parting Glass Racing, Saratoga's original racing partnership. Visit them on the web at partingglassracing.com, and by Embrace the Race, the apparel for the horse racing lifestyle, available at the Museum of Racing, their new store at 12 Circular Street in Saratoga, and online at embracetherace.com. And good morning once again. Glad you were able to join us this morning. Get settled in. 5 major guests in front of us, and we will begin this morning with the gentleman who has the reigning Horse of the Year and the defending champion in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Ladies and gentlemen, the trainer of Wise Dan, Mr. Charlie Lopresti. Charlie, Mark Cassano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, Charlie, we always enjoy having you on. How is everything in Kentucky with Wise Dan? How are things going?
Well, I think everything's really well. You know, it was a disappointment that he got beat in that race, but we're just going forward. He came out of the race really good. He had a really good work last Saturday, and we're following the same schedule as last year. This morning we let him have a big, strong gallop on the main track and let him run down the lane a little bit, and we got the last quarter in 23 and change, and he was full of run and came back to the barn bouncing, and so we'll just kind of train him up to the race, and we'll leave Tuesday, and hopefully we can repeat what we did last year.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Now, Charlie, I want to take you and the audience back to the Shadwell Mile, his last start. Moved off the turf to the poly track, Wise Dan, number 10 from the extreme outside post. Charlie, talk about this if you would.
Well, it was less than an ideal day, I can tell you. I looked at my phone. There was no rain on the radar, and I couldn't see across the street. It was raining so hard. You know, and I talked to Johnny in the room. He said, if it runs on the grass, don't run him. He said, we ran the race before. He said there's just too much water on it. And so they took it off, and we went to the poly track. And as we were walking over there, you could see the water standing on the poly track. I mean, it was just literally standing on top of it. The post position didn't help us, so we got banged around into the first turn, and Johnny said he was mad after that happened, and the horse was fighting him, and he was fighting the racetrack at the same time. He ran 41 feet further than anyone than the winner, and he only got beat a length and a quarter. And it wasn't an ideal situation, but I will tell you, and take nothing away from Silver Max, he was an improving horse going into the race. He's a very good horse, and if he gets loose on the lead, he's very dangerous, and that's what happened.
Charlie, this may be somewhat unfair or unrealistic, but Wise Dan has been so good for so long that we simply expect him to win. Was this a shocker to you?
Well, no, it was disappointing. It wasn't a shocker because horses aren't made of iron, and it wasn't an ideal situation. The race, wasn't ideal. I was disappointed more for him than anything because I know he was mad when he got back to the barn. He wanted to win, but he didn't. And as I told everybody for so long, it's not like he's completely undefeated. So it'd be like, going into like a Zenyatta type or Personal Ensign where they're, totally undefeated. He's been beat before, and this race reminded me of his last defeat, which is in Stephen Foster. He didn't handle the track. He was on the bridle, off the bridle. He was wide the whole way. He didn't get the best trip. The track conditions weren't the best, and I have to attribute it to that.
Charlie, are you concerned at all? Because from a handicapper standpoint, handicappers going into the Breeders' Cup Mile need to determine, was the Shadwell Mile a sign that Wise Dan might be tailing off, or was it an aberration because of the track condition and other reasons? Are you concerned in the least that he might be tailing off?
Everything that he showed me, I can't say that one bit. I mean, if you look, it's just amazing how the horse has one race that he gets beaten and everybody jumps off the bandwagon. You look at his, if he's tailing off, look at the way he ran at Woodbine 3 weeks before that. He broke a track record up there, and he was in hand the whole way. Johnny was looking around for the competition. So, no, I don't think that's true. I'm pretty optimistic that he's going to run good. I just hope we get the pace scenario, and I hope we get a good post position.
Charlie, basically, compared to last year when he went into the mile, and he might have been 9.5 on a scale of 10, or he might have been 10 on a scale of 10. To quantify it, how do you feel he's coming into the mile this year?
I think he's every bit as good. He's every bit as good. I know he got beat, and he didn't get beat last year, but it's not like he ran bad and he got beat, 8 or 10 lengths, or he was second beat a length and a quarter. I feel like he's as good as he was last year. His coat looks good. Everything about him is good. The way he acted this morning, I guess one thing that I will take maybe a little bit of the blame for the Shadwell is I didn't press on him very much. I thought that because of what he did at Woodbine, that as fast as he ran, as well as he ran, I didn't need to do much with him. I could coast to the Shadwell and use that as a stepping stone for the Breeders' Cup. And if you look back, he didn't even have a work in between. So maybe I didn't have him as tight as I should. Maybe the racetrack played a factor in it, and the trip played a factor in it. But I think you're going to see a different Wise Dan when we get to Santa Anita, and there's some pace up front. And I think with obviously and Silver Max in there, they will run a lot quicker up front.
Well, Charlie, as always, we appreciate your time very much. Thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. Have a good, safe journey out to California, and all the best next Saturday with Wise Dan and the Breeders' Cup Mile.
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully we can get it done.
Thank you, Charlie. Charlie Lopresti, ladies and gentlemen. And again, this is interesting because Bill Mott talked about with Royal Delta for the Beldame not turning the screws too tight. Out west, Patrick Biancone talked about that with his 2-year-old Diamond Bachelor. Now Charlie Lopresti told you went a little bit easy on him for the Shadwell with the ability to turn the screws tighter for the Breeders' Cup. So it's interesting how trainers think about that final prep for the Breeders' Cup. And we are up to our first break on this October 26th edition of the program. Thank you so much for having joined us. When we return out to Southern California, where we'll welcome in Mr. Buff Bradley. As we go to the break, a couple of Breeders' Cup championship moments from the past. Back with Buff Bradley right after these messages.
Another Breeders' Cup championship moment. At New York's Aqueduct, determined owner John Nehrude gave 5-year-old Cozine a second try in the $1 million Breeders' Cup Mile. And this year, Cozine would not be denied victory as trainer Jan Nehrude watched his dream become reality.
Here comes the horse, Cozine, and it's going to be Cozine to win it.
For the Nehrude family and Cozine, this was their Breeders' Cup championship moment. Another Breeders' Cup championship moment. On an overcast November afternoon at Churchill Downs, the French filly Mies and her rider Freddie Head returned to the Breeders' Cup to defend her title in the $1 million Breeders' Cup Mile.
Mies is charging hard to take the lead now. She's looking for back-to-back wins in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Pulling away, Mies has won it.
For Mies, the first 2-time Breeders' Cup winner, this historic performance was her championship moment.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano. My thanks to Charlie Lopresti once again for having joined us. Next guest will send out champion Groupie Doll in defense of her Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint title next Saturday. We welcome in live via telephone from Southern California, Mr. Buff Bradley. Buff, Mark Asano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Good morning, Mark.
Buff, it's always nice to have you. How are things? How did Groupie Doll ship to California? How's she settled in? How's she doing?
Well, she's doing very well. She got here on Tuesday, walked Wednesday, and trained Thursday and Friday. And I got here yesterday afternoon they got her out to walk her, and her energy level is really good. She is feeling good, playing a little bit in the shed row, walking. So I really was glad to see that. Yes. And seeing that she got out here in good order and, you know, that her energy level is so good.
Good to hear. Buff, want to take you and the audience back to her last start. The Thoroughbred Club of America, Groupie Doll walking into the gate. She is number 6. Buff, your thoughts on the effort this day?
Well, she ran a big race. She really did. You know, it's kind of my fault for maybe where she was in the race. As you'll see that, you know, we had her, Rajiv was asking her early and had her closer for the whole race. And, you know, I really probably took her out of her game. She might have still been third if she'd run the other way, but we knew the track was favoring speed a little bit that day, and it's shorter, so we really thought we needed to do it. But live and learn. We're back to dirt and 7 furlongs, which Groupie Doll thrives on. So that's what we're looking at. I feel really good going into this race, and that was a good prep for her.
Buff, it's interesting. We just spoke to Charlie Lopresti, and he talked about going a bit easy on Wise Dan leading up to the Shadwell as his final prep. Billy Mott talked about going a bit easy with Royal Delta leading up to the Beldame as her final Breeders' Cup prep. I want to discuss the 2 works for Groupie Doll leading up to the Thoroughbred Club of America, 50-2 breezing, 48-1 breezing. Buff, did you back off on her at all going into the TCA? Did you go a little bit easy on her?
Yeah, we may have gone a little bit easier on her in the works. You know, you don't want to always leave it in the work. But I think you know, some of these top of the line fillies, they can be that way, or even Wise Dan. You know, I think so. We let her ramble right along last work, and you know, I think I said, let's get her feeling good and get her sharp, and that did. That kind of sharpened her back up. And today we're going to work here in about 25 minutes at Santa Anita, and we're going to go a half in it. It won't be as hard as last week.
Now, the work you're talking about last week, a sharp one, half in 46.2 breezing. Buff, I think it was 2 full seconds faster than the next fastest work. Was that exactly what you were looking for to put her on her toes?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and we know she can go that fast. And, you know, we didn't have a stick on or anything. I just told my exercise rider, Jay, that let her do what she wants. I said, get her into it and then sit on her and let her do what she wants. And she did. And today, you know, she'll have a good work, but it won't be like that because she's trained right along since the TCA. She's trained very well and trained right along. And I think, you know, this next week she'll go to the track every day, but it won't be, you know, very hard for her.
Buff, earlier in the interview, you commented about getting her back on dirt at 7/8 of a mile. Now, considering that she has got a wonderful record on synthetic, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's like 4 for 6.
Yeah.
You know, is she?
Yeah, she does, but you know, I think, you know, I really have. I've said all along she was going to grade 1 at Keeneland, and I don't think that she cares for the poly track as much as the dirt. I just think she's a better dirt horse, and we've always thought that, even when she won there. I mean, she won very impressively last year, going 3/4. I just think that, you know, she was, maybe the field wasn't as strong as it was this year. And I said after that race, I said, you know, the good thing about it is that I don't think this is her favorite surface.
Buff, let's try to quantify something if we could. Compared to how she was doing going into last year's Filly and Mare Sprint. I believe she had won 4 in a row going into it. How's she doing this year? Is it close to as well as she was last year? Is it as good? Try to quantify it for our audience.
Yeah, and I know it doesn't show on the record, but I and my team feel like she's doing better this year than she was last year. And we really believe that. I mean, she's just mentally better. Physically, she's bigger and stronger. So, you know, we really feel that she's going into this race better than last year.
Wow. I don't think many of our audience members expected to hear that. Is your confidence level, therefore, as high as it was going in last year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm still right there with it.
Buff, finally, this is going to be her last race for you and your dad. She's going off to the sale. How do you think it's going to feel? I mean, she has taken you guys to the near pinnacle of racing. How's it going to feel once she's gone?
Well, I really tried to keep that in the back of my mind and not really focus on that. And I just wanted to get her to this race because this is what we like to do, is race. And we do breed, but you know, it's going to be hard because, you know, we fold her at the farm and pull her out of her mother, saw her take her first breath, so it's going to be difficult. I won't lie about that. And come sale day, it's going to be really hard. But, you know, people were even giving us a hard time. I got some messages from people saying, I can't believe you're selling her. Well, this is a business, and this is something that, you know, we want to keep going, and we've got several other horses that need the help from her. So, you know, if we want to keep moving along in this business and maybe having another groupie doll, I think that's how we came to the decision. And it wasn't easy, but the cost of keeping one and the insurance and the staging fees, you know, it's quite a bit.
Well, you got one more big one in front of you with her. Buff, we wish you luck next Saturday in the Filly and Mare Sprint. And again, thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark.
Thank you, Buff. Buff Bradley, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, he has always been very, very straight with us. Now, win, lose, or dead heat next Saturday, when he tells you he feels that she's doing better overall than she was going in last year, I know that was a little bit of a shocker to me, too, because she's only won once in her last 4 starts, but she's doing well, going to work in about 20 minutes, and we will try to get you at the end of the show the time for this morning's work, and we are up to our next break. When we return back to Southern California, when we welcome in Hall of Famer Dick Mandela, as we go to this break, more Breeders' Cup Championship moments from the past. Back with Dick Mandela right after these messages.
Another Breeders' Cup Championship moment. New York City and Aqueduct set the stage for a dramatic performance by European Billy Pebbles in the $2 million Breeders' Cup Turf. Blocked early, Pebbles got her chance on the turn for home.
Pebbles with racing room now, and a daring move by Pat Ettery. England Super Filly. Pebbles has won it.
Pebbles' electrifying run to victory against the world's best was her Breeders' Cup Championship moment. Another Breeders' Cup Championship moment. Under a bright Hollywood sun, D. Wayne Lukas, the winningest trainer in Breeders' Cup history, saddled his 3rd straight Breeders' Cup Distaff champion. In Team Lucas fashion, Sakawista went wire to wire.
It's Sakawista now who's up to take the lead. Clever girl can't get to her. They're running out of ground, and it's going to be Sakawista wire to wire.
Sakawista gave Trainer of the Year D. Wayne Lukas another Breeders' Cup Championship moment.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano. My thanks to Buff Bradley once again for having joined us. You know, this year marks the 10th anniversary of one of the greatest days any trainer has ever had. That's because our next guest won 4 of the 8 Breeders' Cup races that day. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome in live via telephone from Southern California, Mr. Dick Mandela. Dick, Mark Asano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Good morning, Mark. It's nice to be here.
Thank you, Dick. When you look back at the 2003 Breeders' Cup, and I'm sure you smile, what do you think most about?
Usually I wonder how I got all these other horses beat.
Dick, that was an incredible day, and as I understand it, some of your colleagues and your peers out there in Southern California started referring to you as the Pope after you went 4 for 8 10 years ago. That speaks volumes.
Well, it was a great day. It's hard to explain the feelings that I had. A lot of emotions went back and forth, but the real significance of it didn't really set in for quite a while. And like any story that you tell, it gets greater as the years go by.
All right, Dick, let's talk Beholder. I think it's fair to say a filly with a mind of her own. How has she matured and changed during her 3-year-old season?
She's growing well. She's always been a good-looking filly, and as the years gone by, she's matured and grown into a mature horse. Mentally, she's probably more spoiled now than she ever was, so I can't say we've straightened anything out that way. But it's not a great problem. It's just a problem we have to focus on with her little idiosyncrasies. But the main thing is she likes to run.
She certainly does, and she runs awfully well. Dick, we remember in the Kentucky Oaks that she dumped her rider going to the post. Is that sort of thing behind her now? Do you worry about those actions at all anymore?
Well, that's my job to worry about that. It's, I'd like to say, no, it'll never be a problem, but it's actually never been a real problem other than Churchill Downs. And, when you go to Churchill Downs for the Oaks or the Derby, you're going to face those kind of crowds and that kind of activity. And that is part of her weakness, but at home she's pretty good by the time we get her to a race, and I don't anticipate any problem.
Well, she was certainly pretty good for her most recent effort. We are about to take a look at the Zenyatta. For our audience, Beholder is number 3. She's going to relax on the lead, control the pace, and kick away when asked. Dick, talk about this performance, if you would.
Well, there was some other speed in there, and we were prepared if they were to decide they had to go. I've always trained her from off the pace in her workouts, and she's very cooperative. And we fully prepared that if somebody wanted to go a little crazy, we'd just let them go and sit back and take a run at them. But as you can see, she gallops away from the gate so easily. It'd be pointless to take that out of her, so we just let her do her thing. And the amazing thing is when they turned for home and Gary leaned forward, it was like a shot out of a cannon. So we just hope we can do that again.
This was her first race versus elders. She was spotting actual weight to her elders. Dick, could you have asked for a better final prep for the Breeders' Cup?
No, I can't imagine one.
Now, Royal Delta, the two-time defending Distaff champion, Bill Mott has already stated he didn't have a real tight for the Beldame. He's been turning the screws tighter for the Breeders' Cup. She worked brilliantly this morning at Belmont Park. Dick, let's talk strategy a little bit. Do you expect Royal Delta to try to take charge early like she did last year, and how might that impact your strategy with Beholder?
I don't really know what her intentions would be, and basically I'm just training my own horse and not trying to get too tricky. You end up tricking yourself out of these things. We're going to kind of just let her run her race and see what happens. But whenever Bill Mott has anything aimed in a race, you've got to take it very serious.
Dick, how good was the October 22nd work for Beholder, 7/8 and 24-2?
As good as a horse could work, I'd say. She did it about as easy as one could do anything like that. So I think we're as geared as we can be, and the game is on.
Sounds good. I mean, that's a small field, but that is a terrific field for next Friday's Distaff. Now, let's move to your turf entrant, the Argentine import Indy Point. Dick, when he came to you early this year, what were your first impressions of him?
Just a beautiful horse, made well, intelligent, and the trainer in Argentina had done a terrific job. He came in great shape, and he got very ready very quickly. We give him purposely, a couple of months to get settled down, and you have to re-educate him and re-acclimate him. And he went through that process probably as easy as anyone I've had, until I got just ready to run him at Hollywood Park, and he got a little bit of a fever, and just picked up a little virus, and we put that off and then went to Del Mar and started him in the Wicker handicap 6 weeks later. And he won that, as you know, very nicely. We had a terrible day in Arlington Park. That's just one of the things that happen in racing. He jumped all over his quarters and his front feet and sored him up for a few days, but we got over that, and he showed that that's what it was in his race in the John Henry here. And we couldn't be happier with him. He had a big work here the other day, a mile 36 and change on the grass, and so we don't see any reason he wouldn't run as good or better.
Well, we are about to take a look at a piece of the John Henry Turf Championship, his last start. Coming under the line the first time for our audience, he is number 4. He's 6th on the fence in the light-colored silks. Dick, talk about this effort, if you would.
I'm sorry, say that again. I was training horses.
Oh, okay. We're taking a look at a piece of the John Henry. They're now straightening out down the backstretch, and Indy Point is 6th on the fence in the light-colored silks, coming off that, shocking last-place finish in the Arlington Million. Talk about how good this effort was.
Yeah, I thought it was fabulous. He relaxed really nice, set back off the pace, and when Gary asked him to go, it was just where and how fast is the only question he asked. So, like I say, if we could just get that performance repeated, we'll be in pretty good shape.
Now, Dick, he was originally a middle-distance runner in Argentina who has since successfully stretched out, but he's never won at 1.5 miles. I think he's only run 12 furlongs once. Your feelings about the extended distance next Saturday?
No, actually, he won the Argentine Derby, which I believe is 1.5 miles on the main track.
Oh, okay.
On the dirt. And then he was second in the Carlos Pellegrini as a 3-year-old against older horses. So that was a good effort also. So he's proven both ways.
And finally, Dick, you had pre-entered Vianet, a very close third in the recent Rodeo Drive in the filly and mare Turf, but you're not going to run her. Why not?
No, I breezed her on the Turf the day that we entered, and she kind of jarred herself up, and we don't think it'd be in her best interest. We took her out. We'll wait for another day.
Dick, thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. We appreciate it, and all the best with Beholder and Indy Point in the Breeders' Cup, and we'll be talking with you again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dick Mandella, ladies and gentlemen, and he's got a couple of loaded guns for the Distaff and the Turf. And we are up to our next break when we return back out to Southern California, where we'll welcome in Mr. Simon Callahan. As we go to the break, more Breeders' Cup Championship moments. Back with Simon Callahan right after these messages.
Another Breeders' Cup Championship moment. At sunny Santa Anita, the best horses from around the globe came to run in the world's richest grass race, the $2 million Breeders' Cup Turf. No American horse had ever won this event until Manila, blocked on the rail, got clear and unleashed a furious rally.
They're coming to the wire, and it's theatrical. Manila coming after him, and yes, Manila gets there.
For a jubilant Jose Santos and a determined Manila, this was their Breeders' Cup Championship moment. Another Breeders' Cup Championship moment. Hollywood Park was the site, and the International Budweiser Breeders' Cup was at stake in the $2 million Breeders' Cup Turf. America's Theatrical would bring home the honors in a dramatic stretch duel with European champion Trempolino.
Trempolino taking the lead. Theatrical has game, and he's coming right back. Theatrical in front, and here is the wire, and Theatrical has won it.
Theatrical's victory over Europe's best was his Breeders' Cup Championship moment.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Cassano. My thanks to Dick Mandella once again for having joined us. Next guest, batting cleanup, has got an improving and fascinating runner for the Breeders' Cup Mile and no jet lag. We welcome live via telephone from Southern California, Mr. Simon Callahan. Simon, Mark Cassano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Hi, good morning.
Simon, you received no jet lag this summer. His recent form at that time in Europe, really, I don't know how else to say it, was bad. What were your first impressions of him when you got him?
Yeah, I mean, you know, his last couple of runs in Europe weren't the best, but they sprinted him and then he ran on very soft ground, and you know his previous form was really good on firm turf. So, you know, I kind of like the profile of the horse, and you know ever since he arrived in, I mean he just trained like a real natural. I mean, like he'd been in California all his life. I mean, you know, and as soon as we started faster work, I mean, he really was an exciting prospect.
His first start for you came in an August 11th entry-level allowance at Del Mar, where he basically did everything wrong prior to the start. He acted up in the gate very badly. He broke very slowly, and he still won. Talk about that effort.
Yeah, no, like you said, he got very restless in the gate, and you know that caused him, you know, to be slow away. But you know, it kind of worked in his favor in a sense because he's a pretty strong, aggressive horse. So we definitely wanted to, you know, to get a bit of cover and get him in behind horses to relax. And you know, thankfully they went a strong pace in front, which enabled him to relax. And then obviously he finished off the race really well and showed a really good turn of foot.
Well, he went from that entry-level allowance to the City of Hope Mile. Here it is for our audience. No jet lag is number 4. Simon, this is a pretty dramatic jump in class, going from a non-winners other than to the City of Hope. Your reasons, which turned out great, for pointing to this race?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it wouldn't be typically the route that I would, you know, would go. I mean, we, you know, normally like to go the second condition or maybe in a overnight stake. But, you know, this horse has always, you know, in the morning showed us, you know, incredible talent. You know, I mean, really, he's an exciting horse. I mean, he you know, when the way he works in the morning is pretty close to as good a horse as I've had. So, you know, that really, you know, enthused us to make this decision. And, you know, like you said, it was definitely a big jump up in class. But, you know, what he was showing us in the mornings, we felt, you know, he definitely warranted it.
Simon, the one thing that concerned me a bit here, and you touched upon this briefly earlier, he seemed a little anxious to me early in the race. If I'm right about that, is that a concern for you?
Yeah, I mean, he's that kind of horse. I mean, he's a little highly strung, so we're doing everything we can just to keep him, you know, as relaxed as possible. And definitely a strong pace up front will help us. I mean, just for him to relax, really, not for any other reason. But you know, it feels like that will be the case. I mean, there's obviously in the race, and there's Silvermax. I mean, they're pretty speedy horses. So I think, you know, from that standpoint, I think they'll go quick, and that will enable him to relax and then hopefully have a good finish at the end.
Mike Smith rode him for the first time for you in the City of Hope. What did Mike have to say to you after the race? Yeah,
I mean, you know, Mike, you know, said to me, you know, he just, as soon as he got to the front, he kind of thought he had done enough. And, you know, he said he's got an incredible kind of foot. You know, he said, you know, he felt throughout the whole race he was always going to win. I mean, he's got a great cruising speed, and he's got a ton of foot. And, you know, that's what you need to win these type of races. And, you know, we believe he's going to be, you know, a very live contender, you know, in the Breeders' Cup Mile. You know, having said that, obviously, you know, we're coming against, you know, extremely strong competition, and, you know, Wise Dan and lots of other good horses. So, but we believe we've got the right horse.
He worked last Saturday, 5/8 on the grass and 58-4. How good was that work?
Yeah, I mean, the work was, you know, as good as you could ever hope, really. I mean, you know, it looked effortless for him, and, you know, the time speaks for itself. I mean, it was really good work. I mean, he's going to do his last bit of work a little later on this morning. He's just going to breeze on his own. You know, probably a little slower than 58 and change. You know, he's fit. It's just a matter of, you know, Mike getting a feel for the horse again and maintaining his fit.
Well, Simon, realistically, what are your expectations next Saturday in the Breeders' Cup Mile?
I mean, you know, like I said, I mean, it's a really good race, as you'd expect. You know, I think, you know, if he's in the first three, we'd have to be, you know, really happy with that. You know, but, you know, I think he's got what it takes to go really close to winning.
Can he move forward again from his effort in the City of Hope to the Breeders' Cup Mile?
Yeah, I think he can. I mean, from what he's been showing us in the mornings and the way he's trained since the City of Hope, you know, gives us, you know, reasons to think he's still improving.
Simon, you have also pre-entered Ontology for the juvenile turf. He has run on grass only once, rallying for second. Tell us about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a horse that's always shown us lots of potential, this horse. You know, and I feel he's definitely a turf horse. You know, he ran a really nice second to Diamond Bachelor, who's a talented 2-year-old here in California. You know, the downside of his pedigree is very turf-orientated. So, you know, I think he's definitely going to be a better horse on turf, which is, you know, why we went for the juvenile turf, obviously. And he's training good, and, you know, he's going to be a long shot, but, you know, it's, you know, we feel he warrants his place in the race.
Simon, thank you so much for having taken time out of your schedule this morning to have joined us on Down the Stretch. We thank you again, and we want to wish you all the best next weekend with no jet lag and Ontology.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Simon Callahan, ladies and gentlemen. The reason I wanted Simon on this morning, this no jet lag, when you take a look at his past performances, I'm telling you, his last few races in Europe were dreadful. This horse has come 1,000,000 miles, and he could be quite fascinating next Saturday in the Breeders' Cup Mile. And we are up to our final break on this October 26th edition of the program when we return to Kentucky, where we'll welcome in Mr. Ian Wilkes. As we go to the break, 2 more Breeders' Cup Championship moments of the past, featuring 2 of my personal favorites, Ferdinand and Alysheba. So we'll take a look at those Breeders' Cup Championship moments to the break. Back with Ian Wilkes right after these messages.
Another Breeders' Cup Championship moment. Hollywood Park was the stage for an epic battle between Kentucky Derby champions Ferdinand and Alysheba in the world's richest race, the $3 million Breeders' Cup Classic. And the champions would battle it out to the wire.
Ferdinand, Judge Angelucci on the outside, Alysheba. Ferdinand has the lead. Alysheba, a final turn. The 2 Derby winners hit the wire together.
Ferdinand's classic win was his Breeders' Cup Championship moment. Another Breeders' Cup Championship moment. As the November daylight faded at historic Churchill Downs, Alysheba sought to capture the $3 million Breeders' Cup Classic and become the richest thoroughbred in racing history.
Alysheba with a short lead. He's unveiling, seeking a goal. A final move as they come to the wire. And Alysheba, America's horse, has done it.
For Horse of the Year, Alysheba, this was his Breeders' Cup Championship moment.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano. My thanks to Simon Callahan once again for having joined us. Our rapid-fire series of interviews this morning takes us back where we started to Kentucky. Final guest will saddle Fort Larned in defense of his Breeders' Cup Classic title. Joining us live via telephone, Mr. Ian Wilkes. Ian, Mark Asano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
And how's the big horse?
Oh, he's good. Yeah, he's very good.
Ian, I want to take you and the audience back to Saratoga. We had you on the morning of the Whitney. That had to be a major disappointment for you. He just didn't run that well that day. What happened?
Good question. That's a good question. You just one of them days. Everyone has them days. You just put a line through it, you move on, and the more you watch that race, it wasn't a bad race. I really felt the horse, ran a decent race, but he didn't run to his capability.
And Ian, you were then forced to skip the Woodward. Would you remind us why?
Yeah, he had a muscle strain behind over his rear end, and I had to, just wasn't quite right to run him. So I was forced, and maybe that was a blessing how bad that track got that day.
And then instead of coming to New York for the Jockey Club Gold Cup, a route you used successfully last year, you decided to keep him home at Churchill for the Homecoming Classic. Why?
Well, the thing is, when I scratched him from the Woodward, I had to walk him 8 to 9 days, and going back to if I'd taken him to the Jockey Club, the horse would have done too much. I would have just got too hard a race in him. He would have done way too much for what he was ready for. And I'm not taking anything away from the horses I ran against in Homecoming Classic, but they weren't the Grade 1 horses of Ron the Greek and Flat Out and Palace Malice. They weren't there. And it was just a 1.8 mile where I could get a good race in him, get him back on track, because I needed that race to get to the next step. So that was one of the main reasons, and I didn't have to ship him again.
Well, we are watching the Homecoming Classic. They are going down the backside. Fort Larned seized control at the break and is en route to going wire to wire. So, Ian, from the standpoint of what you were looking to get out of this race, how well did he run?
He ran good. He got tired. This horse got a little empty on me, got a little tired. But one good thing, even when they went past the wire, that horse for Charlie Little Prestige could not get by him. He was not going to let that horse get by him. And I got everything I wanted. He come out of this, he was tired. He took a couple of days, he bounced back good. And he trained very forward since then, going in the right direction.
He hadn't raced for 8 weeks coming into the Homecoming Classic. So considering how tight you had him for this race, can we all expect a major move forward for the Classic?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I ain't got a problem with that. The horse's speed, the horse tells you, he feeds your confidence. And he's doing that right now. He's taken me where I want to go, and I'm very pleased the way he's doing.
Let's talk about his work pattern, because this is fascinating. I know that you did this last year with him because we talked about it. You worked him twice within 3 days. Tell our audience about that, using the first work to get to the second work.
Yeah, it's just more like a case of I was using work to set up his major work. His major work was the second one. And I just worked him a half. I let him just do a 49, which that's nothing to him. Let him stretch his legs and let him gallop out, but that was all, just an eighth of a mile. I didn't want him to gallop out any more than that. And that was just enough to get his blood pumping, to tease him ready for the next work. And then I come back with it in 3 days and with his major work, and the horse worked really good, very pleased. He worked a minute 3. But the important thing was the way he galloped out. He galloped out 12-1, and then went out another 8 in 12-4, sorry.
When's he going to ship, Ian?
Tuesday. We ship on Tuesday.
Let's talk strategy for a moment. His 2 victories this year have both come on the engine. And we know that Game On Dude, who looks to be the horse to beat in this year's Breeders' Cup Classic, he's a horse who likes to get into a rhythm on the front end and dictate things. Ideally, where would you like to see Fort Larned? Once the gate springs open next Saturday, where would you like him placed?
Well, he's going to be forward in the race. He's going to be forward. And I've always said, and I'll always, he doesn't have to lead. He can sit off. He can lead. Like, you go back to not this year's Whitney, the Whitney the year before. That was probably one of the most impressive paces you ever see from a horse. Is how he sat just off the pace and then opened 5 lengths on him on good horses. And the thing is, it's all up to Brian. I've got to trust him, and I've trusted him for the last 2 years with this horse, and I'm going to roll my dice and trust Brian, and I've got the utmost confidence in him. When them gates open, the important thing is to get a good break, and then he's just got to ride the horse, and that's going to be up to Brian.
Ian, let's try to quantify something a bit here. As compared to how Fort Larned was doing coming into last year's Breeders' Cup Classic, how's he doing this year?
Well, he's doing just as good, this horse. He's doing, I cannot fault him the way he's doing, and I just think he's a little more battle-tested this year. He's been to the big stage. We went to the Breeders' Cup not being on the very big stage and the big crowd, the whole atmosphere, everything. He's been there. He's done that, and I think that's a big asset for him, and I cannot fault the way the horse is doing this year. He's training just as good.
Well, Ian, as always, we thank you for your time. We appreciate you having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch, and we wish you all the best next Saturday in defense of your Breeders' Cup Classic title.
Mark, thank you. I appreciate it. And, Mark, if I just have to say hi to all the girls up there in Saratoga. I've got some good friends up there.
That's wonderful. Well, I know they'll be rooting for you next Saturday, Ian. Good luck. Thank you. We'll be talking with you again very soon.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ian Wilkes, ladies and gentlemen, and Fort Larned in defense of his Breeders' Cup Classic title. Okay, next Friday and Saturday, two of the busiest, biggest days in racing. Let us now take a look at the race schedule, beginning with the Breeders' Cup schedule for next Friday, November 1st. These are all Eastern times. The marathon gets things kicked off at approximately 4:45, followed by the juvenile turf at 5:25, where the Chad Brown-trained Bobby's Kitten will likely go off favored. The juvenile turf will be followed by, I think, one of the most competitive races on the Breeders' Cup card, the Dirt Mile at 6:05, the Juvenile Fillies Turf. And folks, if all of these two-year-old fillies stay healthy, and we'll knock on wood, over the last week, this is going to be one terrific race. And Mark Casse, the trainer of My Conquistadore, is now saying, and this is not a major surprise, that she is almost a certainty to go in the Juvenile Fillies Turf, and she just adds strength to an already strong group of two-year-old fillies. The Breeders' Cup Distaff for the 30th time. A field, we are expecting a field of only 6, but it is a sensational field headed by the two-time defending champion Royal Delta against Princess of Silmar and Beholder and Close Hatches and Authenticity. What a sensational renewal of the distaff at about 7:35. Now, the Saturday schedule of Breeders' Cup races will begin with the Juvenile Fillies at 3:05. Will Sweet Reason be able to bounce back from that troubled second in the Frisette? Is Artemis Agrotara 2 for 2? Is she that good? Can she handle 2 turns? We're going to find out at about 3:05 next Saturday. The Filly and Mare Turf, where Dank should be favored in there. As long as the Fugue goes to the turf, Dank will likely be the favorite in the Filly and Mare Turf against Marketing Mix and Tis Flirtatious. And folks, with the defection of Viennette, who is going to entertain Laughing on the front end? It looks like Laughing could control next Saturday's Filly and Mare Turf. The Filly and Mare Sprint comes at approximately 4:21, where Groupie Doll tries to defend her title. The Turf Sprint at about 5:05 is followed by the Juvenile at 5:43. The Breeders' Cup Turf at 6:22, where Point of Entry is going to try to run for the first time since being injured in June and having surgery for Shug McGahee. The Sprint at about 7:01. The Mile, where Wise Dan looks to defend, at about 7:40. And finally, the 30th renewal of the Breeders' Cup Classic. Game On Dude will almost certainly be favored against a very good field, including a European in declaration of war at about 8:35. So what a sensational 2 days of racing next Friday and Saturday. A couple of quick stories for you. Unfortunately, Doulahan, the synthetic specialist who was third in the 2012 Kentucky Derby, was euthanized recently due to colic. This came just a week after he was retired. Owned in part by Saratoga resident Ray Bryan, Doulahan won only 3 races during his career, but they all came in Grade 1 events. And Martin Panza, the Vice President of Racing and the Racing Secretary at Hollywood Park since 1994, has been named the Senior Vice President of Racing Operations for the New York Racing Association. Panza, who will report to NYRA President Chris Kay, will now oversee the racing office. meaning that P.J. Campo will report to him. Panza will start his new job in late November. Preakness winner Oxbow has been retired. Interestingly, I saw no reason given in the release that was sent to me. All right, time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air. Here at the Clubhouse Racebook in Albany, our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, just a great job organizing our 5 guests this morning from Kentucky and Southern California. Great job, Julie. Thanks to Mick Richards. Back in the control room in Schenectady, Pat Peretta directed and handled the pre-production work, Vince Westcott on audio. And thanks to all of our guests this morning. Charlie Lopresti, Buff Bradley, Dick Mandela, Simon Callahan, and Ian Wilkes. And thanks to our sponsors, Embrace the Race, the apparel for the horse racing lifestyle, available at the Museum of Racing, at their new store at 12 Circular Street in Saratoga, and online at embracetherace.com. And by Parting Glass Racing, Saratoga's original racing partnership. Visit them on the web at partingglassracing.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, coming up in just a couple of moments, following Down the Stretch, a special presentation explaining to you about the brand new website here at Capital OTB. It's capitalotbbet.com. So a special presentation will be coming up in just a couple of moments. As always, thank you so very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. Have a wonderful weekend and a terrific upcoming week. Enjoy Breeders' Cup Friday and those terrific races. And from all of us here at Down the Stretch, we'll see you next week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.